Hi guys, today we're going to do a brisket. I'm not a professional at this by any stretch of the imagination. Last night, after a lot of research on YouTube, I was able to successfully smoke a pork butt and came out great, very happy with it, but I researched it all on YouTube, so I figured I would put one together myself, maybe something that I say helps, maybe I'll look at it a little differently, who knows. But it's fun to do, so we're going to do a brisket for Sunday night dinner. So I'm going to prep this, and I went down, I live in the Cleveland area, we went down to the West Side Market, and we went to Lance's Meat, got a 9 3/4 pound brisket, and here he is, rather large, a little bit grayer than I would have anticipated, but we're going to make do with it. And as I was watching online, everybody is basically cleaning these guys up with the level of fat. So I'm going to go through here, and everybody's talking about a 1/4 inch of fat on the fat side. So we're going to trim some of this up to get down to that level. And a sharp knife is absolutely key. But trimming a lot of this fat off so that you get down to a reasonable level of fat that you can expect to cook through and then also eat once it has melted off. An interesting thing while I'm doing this, I'll talk to you about last night in the dealing with the pork butt. I got introduced to the concept of smoking stall. And I'm sure a lot of you guys already know this. I did not at the time, and fortunately texting with some buddies, they explained it to me. But the smoking stall is basically where the meat stops rising in temperature. And for about 4 hours, this thing stopped rising in temperature. I think I got 2 degrees in 4 hours. I was a little panicked, but in this pork butt, I had injected a lot of applesauce from, or not applesauce, apple concentrate directly into it. So I had a lot of moisture in the pork butt. And from what I found out, this stall occurs when you have a lot of moisture and the level comes up to about 150 degrees. And you have a situation where the liquid moisture is turning into the steam or evaporating basically into a gas. And that's basically you've got that conversion. One of the byproducts is cooling. So as this liquid is turning into a gas, evaporative cooling is basically what's going on inside of the piece of the meat. So while it's sitting in there in 225 degrees, it's stuck at that 150 basically until it converts a lot of that liquid off into steam, and then it can rise up into temperature. So threw me for a loop. Sitting there 4 hours, gaining 2 degrees in that 4 hours. This was going to be a 48-hour situation, which I was not up for. All right, we're back. I've cleaned this up to the best of my ability. I'm sure some of you out there are saying, oh my God, what's he doing? But to the best of my ability, I tried to get as much fat down to a 1/4 inch. I've got all girls in the house. Yeah, they're not big fans of fat, nowhere near as much as I am. So it may be a little leaner. On the top side. Underneath, I did go nice and clean as best as I could. There's a little bit of fat remaining, which is nice marbling. But I'm at a level where I think I'm good. So now at this point, I've got a mixture of salt, pepper, and garlic powder. And I'm going to start with this, just basically coating up the meat. And this should adhere with a little bit of pressure with my hands, of course, but this should adhere to the meat. Make sure you're covering everything, and pat this in a little bit so as I flip it, because you know what Emerald says, I don't know where you get your meat, but my meat doesn't come seasoned, and I like two-sided tasted meat. So here we go on the other side, salt, pepper, garlic. And just spreading it on there, relatively liberal. And remember, this is a lot of salt, but remember this is started at 9 3/4 pounds. I took off about 1 pound of fat, so we're still at almost a 9-pound piece of meat. So while it is a lot of salt, it is a lot of meat also. So we'll get over here on this side, pat that guy in. And you notice that I'm intending on using this whole bag, so I don't mind taking my hands after touching the meat and going right into the bag. So I'm not going to be using this salt and pepper on anything else. So we've got a nice salted and peppered guy here, and we're going to get to a rub. But before we do the rub, as they kind of taught me online, to do just French's classic yellow mustard. Okay, and on this, spread over kind of liberally, and then massage this into the meat without removing too much of the salt, pepper, and garlic. And what this is going to do, I think it adds a little bit of flavor, but that's not the main purpose. The main purpose is to create a binder for the rub to adhere to, and then, which will help you, of course, with your flavor and also with your bark. So here we go, we're just putting this all over. And something that a lot of guys, I was amazed online, I'm a big fan, we do a lot of venison in this house, I'm a big fan of any serious meats. When you're getting excited about making a serious piece of meat, I'm a big fan of doing it the night before and letting it rest, season in the refrigerator. I think that's a big deal. I think that adds a ton of flavor and really bakes it in. Again, while I was down in, my daughter's running the camera. While I was down in Ohio City, or down at the marketplace downtown Cleveland, there was Urban Herbs. Really nice lady. Asked her what she felt was best. We kind of honed into something that has a lot of paprika, has a lot of brown sugar. Both those things I really like. The paprika gives it that nice smoky flavor, just enhancing it that much more. But then that brown sugar, that's where your crust comes from in anything that you're doing. So I'm a big fan of that. There's other things in here. There is not salt. There is a little bit of garlic, so I didn't overdo it. Make sure that when you're doing salt and pepper and you choose a rub, make sure that it doesn't have a lot of sodium in it. You don't want this thing to be super salty. Although it is a big piece of meat, adding salt and pepper and then a rub that has a lot of pepper in it, look and make sure that it's lower down on the list in the ingredients. So with this, as best as I can, I am going to begin to layer this on the meat. And I'm certainly not going to use all of this for this one. So I want to be cognizant of reaching my meat soaked hand into the rub. So with that said, now I'm going to kind of spread some of this around. I got some bigger chunks here. We're going to break those up, pat them in a little bit. Fully covering this guy. He's a big piece of meat. Yeah, if my wife is here, she'd probably be saying I'm making a mess, but she's not, so she can't. And when she watches this online, which, by the way, if you're seeing this, it means it was a success. If it's not a success, you won't see it. So, and remember, I'm going to do this overnight, and then tomorrow, when I go to take it out and put it on the smoker, I'm going to have a second chance to touch this up. So if you're seeing any spots that I'm not seeing, all right, breaking my rule, seeing any spots that I'm not seeing, understand that I'm going to have a second bite at this apple here. So, okay. Whoops, one little one down here did not get it. Okay. We're pretty well covered there. And like I say, I got another bite at the apple tomorrow. Wash the hands a little bit. Now the last thing I saw, I haven't tried this yet, but I like it, at least on smoke. I saw one of the videos where the guy finished up, actually it's deer meat for dinner. Great YouTube channel, watch it. But he put red pepper right over the top. And as he said, he likes his stuff hot, don't overdo the red pepper. So we're just gonna come in here and put some red pepper flakes on. And that'll add a little spice to the bark, a little heat. I don't believe there is any cayenne in this rub, but it is a purchased rub. I would have put some cayenne in mine, so I'm almost out. Matter of fact, I am now. So, but that's basically where we're at. Cover this up with a little bit of foil loosely, just so nothing falls into it when it's sitting in the fridge for 24 hours or at least overnight. But this is where I'm at. We'll pick it up with it coming out and then fire it up smoking. Good morning, we're back. It's Sunday morning. I prepped the brisket on Friday, about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's been in the refrigerator for about 36 hours. I set my alarm at 4 a.m. on Sunday. I wasn't in the mood to video at that point, so you're just going to have to trust me that 4 a.m. it went into the smoker. The previous night, it was a late night, I left the brisket out to come to room temperature. Still had it covered and everything, but I like it at room temperature before it goes in the smoker. I had the smoker set at 275. I use an electric smoker. It's the easiest thing for me. I know a lot of other guys swear by other types of smokers, and that's fine. But the electric smoker, you set it, you forget it, you know your temperature is going to be there, and if you can't be around for 10, 12 hours of smoking, you know that your temperature is always going to be there. I'm going to be using a applewood. A lot of guys use their own or use chunks. This is just a prepackaged product that you overpay for. You can find them at any sporting goods or barbecuing place, but it's just simply chunks of apple wood. I use about 1.5 cups, not a ton. It seems to get enough smoke in early, which lasts about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. One of the big things that you need to do is get yourself a thermometer that has a remote to it. They got all kinds that will tap into your Wi-Fi system in your house, and you can check it from wherever you're at or on your cell phone or stuff like that. But for 25 bucks, I got a probe and a remote. You stick the probe in the meat. It keeps you from opening the door all the time. That lets out a lot of heat, and you lose 25-30 degrees. That's really going to fluctuate your cook time. So it is now 8:30. So I've been smoking for 4.5 hours, and we've come up to 165. My target's about 195 to 200. Comes up to that 165 pretty quick. The next 30 degrees are going to be the toughest, as I referenced earlier, where it's going to let off a lot of that moisture and keep the internal temperature cool, or keep it from rising as quick. We're planning on having this for dinner. My wife comes back. We'll have a dinner tonight, 5 to 6:30. I will very well may be done well before that, but there's a nice little trick that I learned on YouTube in wrapping it in tin foil, wrapping a beach towel around it, and then placing it right into a cooler without any ice, and it just maintains that temperature and moisture level very nicely. So you'll see that later on in the video, but I wanted to just check in and let you know how the process is going, and we'll have more coming down the road. Okay folks, it's beginning to rain out here, and I thought I'd just get a real quick photo. We are at about 180 degrees. This is the electric smoker. It's starting to rain a little bit, so sorry if you hear thunder in the background. But there we go on the brisket. And my dog just does not like the thunder, so she's flipping out. One other thing that I want to touch in on, underneath the brisket, there's a drippings pan. I put about 1/4 inch of water in it. That water creates moisture in the smoker. Saw this from one of the guys, and we're going to give it a try. But basically in that dripping pan, we've got the drippings here, and I'm gonna strain that off as best as I can into a little sauce pot, keep it warm, and should it not come out real moist, I've at least got some moisture to enter back onto it and some additional flavors. So this is gonna have a lot of the spice rub. So without making a mess, we're going to strain that off. There's going to be a lot of grease in there, there's no doubt. We can let this cool in the meantime and get some of that grease off the top as it cools. So just another idea to be aware of. And next time you see us, we'll be slicing into it. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That means that we've been in, what, 8 hours on about a 9 pound. I had something funky go on, and I'm not sure what, but this is a good lesson. Make sure you've got 2 thermometers. My thermometer went haywire. I was running at about 170. And then suddenly I hear the alarm going off saying I'm at 200. Now as the probe is sitting here out of it, I'm reading 268. So I ended up going with your basic thermometer. I'm right at 200 on the basic thermometer. So I pulled it out. I'm way early for dinner, but this is a nice thing with these roasts. I'm going to wrap this guy in foil, nice and tight, and you can feel that it's tender as all get out. It's nice and soft. But we'll wrap this guy in a couple layers of foil, closing it all up, keep that heat in. Can't use too much foil here. However, I did use up my full roll. So now I got it all nice and wrapped in the foil, and we'll take a nice beach towel. And wrap this baby up in the beach towel. And we're just trying to insulate this guy enough so that we maintain that temperature and allow it to cool slowly, which will draw in all the juices back into the meat instead of cutting it, having it run all over the cutting board. So now with it all wrapped up nice and tight, I'm going to place it in a cooler. Of course, the cooler is at room temperature and there's no ice in here. And now we're going to seal this guy up. Okay, it's time to eat. So we got the brisket out. And it's still nice and warm to the touch. Ideally, it's going to be hot. And this is now almost 4 hours later. And I kept it nice and warm. Yeah, Bella, you like this smell? Thought you might like it. Nice and moist. And then we're going to slide it off this foil onto the cutting board. Oh yeah. Okay. Now, on YouTube, if you just Google how to carve brisket, you'll see a nice video. So this is not mine, I'm using it from him. So basically, you want to push away this fat. And as you saw, I had trimmed it, so I don't have a lot of fat. but it is coming off. And I understand it looks like I'm taking the seasoning off with it, but there's seasoning on the bottom side too. And that should have penetrated the meat. So we're trimming this off on this side. We're always going to have the fat on the back. And as he mentions on there, you can trim as little or as much fat as you want. And as I mentioned before, I have 3 girls in my household. I'm sorry, 4 girls in my household. So they're going to kind of want me to trim all the fat off. So we're going to make this nice and lean for them. Okay, so started with this here. We trimmed off all the fat. This is the top, the bottom. The grains run opposite. The top is running north and south, and the bottom is running east and west. So now we flip this around, and as he says, we come in here and separate the two. And there's a layer of fat between them. Ooh, nice and warm. And your knife should very easily find that seam. And sure as heck, it is. The guy does not lie. Okay, so we've separated the hot top and the bottom. Now on the bottom, same thing. Go with the grain and take off as much fat as you like. And you're basically scraping your knife across it and it'll come up. You'll have to carve a little bit. I'm just basically mimicking his video, so I'm not taking any ownership in here, and I probably ought to put his name and a link to his video in the description. We'll see if I can get that sophisticated later. But these are kind of the wasted pieces. They served a purpose to keep it moist and keep the flavor dripping through. Now you've got your grains running this way on the lower, and we'll do a little bit since that fat stayed on the top. We're going to trim a little bit of this off so that we don't have tons. Okay, so basically now with the grains lined up to one another, now you cut across the grains. You basically stack them on top of each other so the grains are lined up, and then begin to slice. And we're going to have to check this out. Ho ho ho! I think we're in business. This may actually get published. Okay. So, first taste. That ain't bad. That ain't bad at all. So basically, that's what we got with a smoking a brisket. A lot of time, piece of meat. This guy was about $55. So it is more expensive than a pork butt. But if you like beef, you spend that kind of money. And I guess I'm sure my dog's greeting him. So with that, we'll cut out from here. Thanks for watching. Okay, had dinner, loved it, no doubt about it. A couple of things that I would do differently though, moving forward. I mentioned to you that I did 275 when it was 4 in the morning. Quite honestly, I was too sleepy to remember that I was at 275 at that point. I'd start off at 225. You also saw that I had rain. I think that's what messed up my thermometer and went from 175 to 200. I'm not quite sure what was going on there. You saw me trim all the fat relatively lean, and then you saw also when I was carving that I used that the gentleman on YouTube, his thought process and scraping off the fat. I would do one or the other. I wouldn't do both. Some of it I would like a little bit more fat. You can always trim it while you're eating it. But other than that, I was very happy. I mentioned 1.5 cups of apple wood in smoking it. Did not have a big, and you'll notice this if you look closely enough, I don't have a big smoke ring. I'm not a big, I like a little bit of flavor on the smoke, but not overwhelming. You could absolutely go more if you like smoke. That cup and a half, you could definitely smoke it longer, especially if doing an apple, which is so soft, versus like a hickory, which is pretty harsh. So just a couple of things. Try it, play with it. If you want to leave a comment, that'd be cool. I don't have a lot of people coming on my site, but thanks so much if you're watching this. You tuned in, and I appreciate it. Anna's over here doing that.
I highly recommend the pork was better than the beef brisket, but it was still pretty good.